The End of a Rainbow by Kits.
Holy shit, Pinkie.
Dash forced out around the bit in her mouth.
That fucking hurt. Where are you learning your shit at thing anyway?
An amused giggle followed by a snort of laughter made Rainbow blush. It was really weird, she reflected. The things that make you blush. She had been totally cool when Pinkie had produced the vinyl bridle, and the rope hadn't fazed her at all, and she had even kept her cool when Pinkie had put the newest acquisition on, and proceeded to break it, and a rather unexpected part of Dash, in. And it's her giggle that breaks you? Way to keep cool, Rainbow. Pinkie giggled again, and the burning feeling in Dash's cheeks crept all the way up the back of her ears. Damn it, Pinkie, she thought, directing it at the one pony she wasn't sure wouldn't be able to pick up on it. You'll beg for it, I swear. You'll beg for hours. I'm sorry. Did little old Pinkie hurt Dashy Washy? For hours, Rainbow promised. She could see the grin, even if she couldn't turn her head to face the earth pony. The aggravating, no-good tease of an earth pony. She could picture it perfectly, from the dimples below each eye down to the tiny overbite and the way her bottom lip curled to the left. If she could have, Dash would have glared at her tormentor. Instead, she flicked her tail and felt resistance and heard a satisfyingly sibilant thwop as she connected. If she was right, and she always was, she had just popped the treacherous seductress on her nose. Her cute little, no doubt crinkled in mirth nose. She closed her eyes as a shudder ran through her. Giggling again, Dash felt Pinkie shift her weight. She felt her mane being brushed and warm breath on her ear as Pinkie whispered, "Don't worry, I know how to keep a secret." Damn it, damn it, damn it. Dash blushed harder. Her face felt hot enough to burn the morning clouds away, no kicking required. Pinkie lifted herself back up, placed a hoof on either side of Dash's trussed-up forelegs, and repositioned herself. The pressure she had been objecting to before returned. This time Dash didn't make a sound. An image came to her. Rainbow could see herself, tied so her front legs were pulled forward and her rear ones sideways. Her tail was lifted high, the rainbow tresses tumbling across her back, exposing her to Pinkie. In her mind's eye, she saw Pinkie balance on her rear legs, her toy strapped to her crotch. Dash imagined it was extended backwards as well as forwards. She wasn't sure it did. Pinkie had blindfolded her before they had begun. The thought of this dual-ended device sent another shiver through her. She bit her lip and panned her imagined view around behind Pinkie. As that bushy tail quivered and danced in her vision, she caught sight of the rear strap, traveling up between Pinkie's legs and rubbing on that very same area she was now all too aware of. She had never been good at hiding anything from this maddening pony. Come to think of it, Pinkie had never been much good at hiding anything from her either. Any deeper philosophizing was driven straight out of her mind as Pinkie began driving into her. She started slow despite her manic nature. Pinkie was no pony to intentionally cause pain. Neither of them had enjoyed that night. Initially, it still hurt a bit, but that feeling was entirely subsumed as a rising wave of pleasure shot up from a part of her she had really never considered in this way. Oh, rainbows! Dash could feel the toy slowly sliding into her. She instinctively clamped down on the intrusion, but Pinkie's exuberance and tendency to overdo everything extended to the application of lubricant as well. She succeeded only in racking herself with another series of shudders as she tightened down on the toy. It had better not be pink. She had no idea why that thought had come to her, but she could see it only too clearly. The embarrassment of being deflowered a second time by such a girly implement made her squirm. She had expected the pressure to cease shortly after it had began, but it just kept coming. Dash realized she was still biting her lip and holding her breath. How long had it been? It seemed an eternity of that painful but oh so wonderful pressure, stretching her in the most marvelous way. She relaxed her jaw and tried to remember to breathe. That was a mistake. The moment she gave herself an inch, it felt like Pinkie was giving her 10. She gasped. In an honest moment, she would admit that it wasn't a cool gasp or an awesome gasp. In fact, it had been more of a squeak. A high-pitched, bouncy giggle came from the pony behind her. She could feel every single vibration of that laugh inside her, and it only exacerbated her troubles. Dash, in a totally awesome and not at all girly way, gasped again. Then again as Pinkie bucked her hips slightly, suddenly pushing the toy deeper into the bound Pegasus. Yes, she had definitely gasped twice, and was not just moaning continuously. She tried to swallow the next gasp, not just cut off this unending one, but only succeeded in transforming her not at all humiliating gasps into totally non-mortifying, low and throaty moans. She gave up trying to maintain any sort of image at that point. She had already lost this round, and thought she might as well enjoy the ride. But this constant, slow pressure was nearly unbearable. She may have lost the war, but she could at least make Pinkie work for it. First, she had to get through this. Dash shakily, subtly shifted her weight. The change in pressure elicited another moan from her. The moan seemed to originate in the tip of her tail and rumble its way through her entire being before rolling out of her mouth. She wouldn't be able to use her wings for this, strapped to her sides as they were. She'd have to rely on her wobbly, trembling legs. With all the strength she had left in her, she thrust back, determined to get to the end of this first thrust with some of her facade of coolness intact. Her eyes shot open in shock. She had completely forgotten about the restraints. It felt like she had moved her rump back a good 10 inches if that crazy melting feeling in her rear had been anything to go by, but she knew that she had at most a half-inch of wiggle room. Pinkie laughed wholeheartedly. Dash buried her already burning face deep into her pillow as she let out the loudest moan yet. The vibrations traveling into her nearly set her off, eliciting a much higher-pitched, drawn-out moan. This would be called by any pony except Dash a whine. Pinkie snorted, not her cute little giggle snort, but an honest-to-goodness snort, and thrust jerkily forward about 3 miles. The whine from Dash shifted up several octaves and then broke into an undeniable whinny as her eyes rolled back. She dimly felt the base of her tail brushing against something soft, but her mind was in no state to make sense of this. The pressure and the stretching stopped. Dash felt as though she might explode. The unfamiliar fullness contrasting with her clenching emptiness had her on the cusp. She whined, trying to form Pinkie's name around the bit in her mouth. She rocked back and forth, hammering against the restraints, trying to bring herself over the edge. She was so close. Maybe Pinkie just knew her well enough, or maybe Pinkie's sense was useful for more than just saving ponies from falling beams and flower pots, but the earth pony was expertly keeping her riding just under her limit. Dash snarled and threw herself backwards against the restraints with a force born of desperate need. The bindings Pinkie had bought were never meant as real restraining devices, and they were no match for the wild abandon with which Rainbow attacked them. She felt her tail pressed up against Pinkie's belly. The earth pony jerked a bit, perhaps in shock, perhaps out of sympathy. In either case, she had shoved a precious fraction of an inch more into herself. Twice the bonds stretched, and her tail was flattened against her back as Pinkie fell forward, pulling some of that incredible, amazing, better-not-be-pink wonder out of her. If the initial entry had been the most incredible thing she had ever felt, this egress was the most incredible thing she had ever felt, with an offer to fly with the Wonderbolts thrown in. She was no longer in control of herself. Her loosened restraints allowed her to gain precious leverage. Faster than Pinkie could react, she drew herself forward and slammed herself back again, knocking Pinkie's legs out and causing the pink pony's full weight to come to bear on the one place Rainbow needed it to. Dash was screaming now. No quiet, restrained moans, squeaks, or whines. All of her breath went to making as much noise as possible. Her emptiness clasped and convulsed around nothing while she bucked against the once objected-to intruder. She was totally lost in her pleasure, thinking she had reached her height. Indeed, had she been able to see herself, she would have concluded that she was finished by the spray that pulsed out of her and soaked Pinkie. She was wrong. Though the initiative had been stolen, Pinkie still had a trick or two left in that fluffy mass of curls. Dash felt something brush against her back, and hot breath warm her already blistering hot neck. A moment later, her head was lifted off of the soaked pillow, yanked back by her mane. Her scream paused only long enough for her to draw breath, but it was long enough to hear the steady squeaks of exertion that told Dash she had been right about the shape of Pinkie's any-color-but-pink purchase. Her scream of pleasure shifted into an even higher pitch as she learned the last surprise that Pinkie's toy had in store. She had been looking forward to feeling that splash of warmth across her rump that signaled Pinkie's peak. She hadn't banked on the ingenuity of novelty item manufacturers. Hot liquid flooded into her, flowing further inside of her than the toy had ever hoped to reach. Dash blinked warily. The world slowly swam into focus. A lock of matted, soaked red hair obstructed most of her vision. She was damp and chilly on her left side. She was damp all over, but a warm, if wet, body was pressed against her back. She moved to brush her mane from her face, but was halted by the remnants of Pinkie's newly purchased restraints. Her jaw was sore, which was weird. It took a second for her to remember her snapping through the bit as she had. "Oh my gosh!" She shook her leg, freeing it from the latex shreds and wriggling out from under her lover. As she did, she felt the toy that had given her so much amazing pleasure slide out of her. She moved slowly, being too tired and too drained to do more than shudder a bit at the echo of their shared pleasure. Pinkie Pie murmured and stirred as Dash slid out from under her. Filled with trepidation, she turned around to gaze at the remains of their party night budget. Pinkie was curled around so that the toy was trapped under her. Dash noted absently that she'd need to find a way to dry the mattress they had used, or it would be as ruined as her bindings. She hesitated. She had to know, but was reluctant to abuse in any small way her best friend and true love. As she stood thinking, the evaporating moisture making her chilly, she had an idea. An almost evil grin spread across her face. Pinkie giggled. Her hiney was being tickled. Well, not tickled, and it wasn't exactly her hiney either. She curled her tail around, trying to brush the sleep-depriving nuisance away, only to have it jerked away and pressed tightly against her back. Her eyes shot open wide. She was fully awake now. Her eyes opened wider still as she felt something warm push its way into her. She leapt straight out of bed in shock, turning as she landed on all fours to face her lover. "Dashy?" she stammered in a fit of confusion. Dash kissed her. This was no good morning kiss, or quick peck on the mouth. It was a kiss more fitting for the beginning of a long night. Pinkie was caught off guard by the passion Rainbow was showing her so early in the morning. Dash pushed her back towards the bed. Pinkie closed her eyes and shuddered in anticipation as she rolled onto her back. "Oh, Pinkie Pie!" Dash's voice cracked with barely contained affection. Her eyes fluttered open as she saw that Dash's gaze was fixed on the toy she still wore. It was dark blue for most of its length. The tip, as well as several small squiggles, which, to a not too discriminating critic might be called lightning bolts, were a shocking yellow. "You are so—" Dash leaned forward, trapping the wondrous pleasure bolt between them. "So awesome." Pinkie's smile would have restarted the rumors of a new goddess of the sun had any pony else been around to see it. Dash's tongue flicked out to lick Pinkie. Dash dragged it up and over her muzzle and then back down along her jawline. She gave a soft gasp. Rainbow nipped her way back up along the edges of her mane, to the tip of her twitching ear. Pinkie felt her love's warm breath against her ear as Dash spoke. "You realize this cloud walk spell has another 12 hours to go, right?" Dash nipped and kissed all the way down her chest, eliciting a series of breathy squeaks. "And this time, I'm not tied up." She was breathing heavily now. She was a morning pony in more ways than one. The trail of kisses continued down across her stomach and over her small, hard nipples. They ceased instead of continuing on to the center of her heat. Pinkie's eyes shot open comically wide as she felt a familiar intrusion at the base of her tail. "Dashy, what?" She didn't get very far into her question before she realized her lover's intentions. Flopping back onto the pillow and raising her legs high to allow her bestest friend easier access, she had one last thought before all was washed away in a flood. "It's sure shaping up to be a super duper ultra fantastic day."